Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome to Olainfarm webinar. Today, we are hosted by the member of the Management Board Salvis Lapiņš. During the webinar, Salvis will inform about Olainfarm latest activities and analyze the non-audited financial results of the second quarter 2015. Before the presentation begins, a quick reminder for those who have joined us for the first time. Right after the presentation, we will open the floor for questions and answers session. We invite you to write your questions in the question box on the right side of the screen also during the presentation. We will address all the questions after the presentation. Salvi, I invite you to proceed with the presentation.
Yeah, great. Hello. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you, Salvi.
Thank you. So let us begin then with a short overview of our second quarter and 6 months performance. And then, as we usually do, we will have a focus issue. Issue will have a specific focus on, and this time I've chosen that those would be pharmacies that we own. And this time, for certain time constraints, our focus session will be a little shorter, fewer slides prepared. So just trying to keep more time open for Q&A session. So yeah, let us begin then. So let's first look at the second quarter. So second quarter only made sales worth slightly more than 23 million euros. It is a reduction of almost 10% compared to second quarter of last year. But then again, looking here at the chart here, you see that last year's second quarter was specifically good, slightly above 25 million euros. So it is a reduction compared to very good second quarter of last year. But if you look to the second quarters of years before that, then we clearly have a very nice increase. So the base was kind of a little high. Therefore, we have demonstrated the reduction. But if you look sort of independently on Q2 of this year, and then I must admit, in terms of sales, it looks quite nice. The main driver, we'll focus on that a little later, but the main growth driver really has been increased shipments to WHO, which in our reports is reflecting as shipments to Netherlands, because that's where the WHO's logistical center is. So that increase was almost sixfold compared to Q2 last year, and so it almost fully compensated for shrinking sales in Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. And if you look at Q2 separately, then sales to these countries have been shrinking by 15%, 40%, and 13% respectively. Pharmacy sales have been more than 4 million euros during the quarter. That's an increase by 12%. Silonos alone has sold almost 1 million euros worth of products, which was also a significant increase to last year. Now, if you look at the profits, preliminary, they are 2.6 million euros, which is a reduction by 50% compared to Q2 last year. And again, looking at the chart here, you see that last year, the second quarter was really one of the best in corporate history, with quite a margin. What specifically happened? I mean, those of you who know the company, you know that we are a big one, and therefore the fixed and the cost structure is such that fixed cost level is reasonably high, and any fluctuation in sales sometimes might leave a disproportionate impact on our profitabilities. And in addition to that, in addition to slightly falling sales, because of several issues, we have decided that in Q2 we'll make provisions of about 1.1 million euros to secure some outstanding receivables from Russia, because as you know, last year we experienced the write-off of some of them, and we remain very careful in this respect. But also, as you know, our Russian trading is taking place in Russian rubles, and so far in Q3 the development of Russian ruble has not really been that favorable to us, so we have therefore planned for a certain foreign exchange loss that we knew we'll have at the time when the report was being produced. If you look separately at Forex for Q2, then it had a very slightly positive impact on us of about 200,000 euros a quarter. But as you know, development of Russian ruble more recently hasn't been as favorable. Now, this has all, of course, reflected itself in how our EBITDA behaves. In second quarter, our EBITDA level was at 4.6 million. First half of this year has been 12.7 million, and rolling 12 months it's at 22 million euros, making, in terms of EBITDA, making it quite a nice 12-month period. But due to increasing sales, we see that the EBITDA margin is down to almost 23%, which is the lowest level for quite some time. But then again, this since provisions that we made, we put them in other costs. Those provisions, of course, left an impact to our EBITDA levels and margins as well. So if you look at the countries for Q2 separately, Q2 alone, you'll see that Russia's share, especially for those of you who follow us carefully, you'll see that Russia's share is very low at this period of time. It's 31%. Those of you who follow us regularly would have noticed that typical Russia's share in our sales would be somewhere between 35 and 40%. So Latvia has therefore gained, of course, its share, 24%. Again, if I'm not mistaken, it's one of the highest, one of the largest shares Latvia has ever had in our consolidated sales. Ukraine is still low, and so is share of Belarus. I mean, these two countries have been falling quite significantly this year. But then again, the Netherlands is now becoming our fourth biggest market with 8% share. As you know, again, this is not really the Netherlands. This is the WHO shipments. Netherlands happen to be the country where the logistics infrastructure is located. During the last webinar, I focused specifically on what we do and how we do in our Central Asian countries. And you see that Central Asian countries combined are making up 5% for total sales. So I'd say it's a nice beginning for that region, especially taking into consideration that in 3 countries we only started seriously operating about 3 or 4 years ago. Now, if you look at the products, in this second quarter, you will see a lot greater sort of decentralization in our product pie charts that you've seen probably ever before in recent years. Now, Nervidin is still quite high at 19% of total sales, but you have 4 following products with 12% share. So, and others are 12%, which is probably, again, higher than ever before. What other major change has happened here is that Remantadin is out of top 10, but that's pretty much due to the seasonality issue. I mean, we're talking about Q2, which is April, May, and June, and Remantadin clearly being anti-flu, primarily anti-flu medicine, of course, has a lot weaker demand in these spring months. Now, if you look at 6 months in total, sales, it's yet another sales record. It's almost precisely 50 million euros, or almost precisely 50, slightly over 50% of our annual target of 100 million. This represents an increase by 3%. Of course, primarily was driven by very good sales in Q1, because as you remember in Q2 we were lagging behind a little bit compared to last year. Pharmacies made gross sales in this period of about 8.2 million euros, and net sales, that means after deducting what wholesale services they've been buying from mother company Olainfarm, the net sales are about 4.2 million euros. Sales by cellulose at this time are 2 million euros. Just to give you a flavor, last year cellulose's sales for entire year were 3 million euros. So cellulose also is growing quite nicely, and to some smaller extent it might be a driving force behind this year's growth. Now, if you look at the profits in 6 months, and again, let me remind you that they have been influenced by total provisions of about 1.5 million euros during 6 months for unsure receivables and expected forex loss. We still, even after that, we still made a net profit of 9.3 million euros in 6 months, which is an increase of 4% compared to last year. Our guidance approved for this year is 15 million euros. Now, in half a year, we already met 62% of our annual guidance. So, again, first quarter of this year was particularly successful. We might not be able to repeat any successful quarter in the remaining 2 quarters of this year. So therefore, I wouldn't be too optimistic about seriously exceeding our profit target, but meeting it, I feel totally comfortable with. So if you look at where has the growth come from in terms of products in the first half of this year, you absolutely see a clear leader, which is our second biggest product at the moment, which is para-aminosalicylic acid. You see, it's this year we sold this product for more than 3.8 million more than we did last year. Other growers, this first half, they're not that clear, but other growers include Imantadine. It was performing very nicely in Q1. So in 6 month terms, it's up for 250,000. Etazine is up for more than 200,000, and one of our chemical products, quinacridinone hydrochloride, is up more than 200,000 euros again. If you look at the fallers, you see the most serious reduction was in sales of Nurofen by about 1.8 billion euros. Adaptol is down 670,000 euros, and Foragin by 640,000 euros. Most of the decliners, Foragin was a big product for Polish market last year, so Polish market has shrunk this year, and therefore Foragin, one of the big products we sold there, has shrunk also quite substantially. But Nurofen and Adaptol, those are basically due to shrinking sales in Ukraine and Belarus. If you look at the countries, you see that 10 out of 15 have been growing. So in terms of countries, situation is growth is more widely spread. The only ones falling are Ukraine and Belarus, which I already spoke about. Uzbekistan has been falling a little, and so has UK and Poland. UK has been falling by a reasonably tiny margin, because you know almost the only product we ship to UK is the raw material for monoacetyl glucose that we ship for further processing by Novartis. And since they reduced their program this year a little bit, our product there has also, our sales to UK have also been falling. But then again, top growers, Netherlands, 2.7 million in 6 months. Latvia, about 1 million. Russia, about 760,000. All the other smaller markets have been up 375,000. Biggest declines in Ukraine by 1.5 million, Belarus by almost 900,000, Poland by slightly more than 500,000 euros. So what else has happened recently? Since our last webinar, we held an annual general meeting on June 11. Pretty much regular things were being decided, approvals of annual accounts and approvals of sales and profit targets. The sales target of for the group, sales target of 100 million euros was approved, and the profit target of 50 million euros was approved. Also, we are in process of preparing this year's Baltic Nordic Roadshow. It's tentatively scheduled for the last week of October, and we tentatively plan to cover Tallinn, Helsinki, Stockholm, and Vilnius. Those of you who want to take this opportunity and meet and ask questions in one-on-one discussions, please send an email to me and communicate any other way, so we can still have about nearly 2 months, 1.5 months to schedule meetings. So we'll try to include you in our schedules if this is possible. Now, since we've covered now pretty much our first half year's results, could we please have a poll of questions so you can express your opinion? Laszlo, could you do this, please? Yeah, so here it is. Would you please mind voting on our 6-month results of what, in your opinion, they are? Are they better than expected? Are they just what you expected? Or are they maybe worse than you expected? As I understand, in this format, we need to take a short pause for you to be able to answer the poll questions. Please take your time to vote. And now in this quarter's focus, I decided to take a little bit of more attention to our retail business. Last year we covered it, was I think 2012, and things have changed since then, and I thought that might be time to have some look at them again, especially since we last covered them. We did some rebranding, and you now see the new logo that has been around for a couple of years by now. So this is a logo you can recognize as our pharmacies in streets of Riga, Daugavpils, Jūrmala, and many other places throughout Latvia. So how did it all begin? In 2011, we announced investing in pharmaceutical retail, and we acquired first pharmacies. At that time, they were called Ilmas Apteekas. As Ilmas Apteekas, they were active for slightly more than a year since acquisitions. And first 2 years after we started investing, the numbers grew to 48. In September of this year, as we speak, number of pharmacies now has been increased to 60. But before we proceed further about pharmacies, I would like to ask Lasme to put another polling question, which sorry I missed when the topic was on screen, and that one is related to the provisions we have made of 1.5 million euros in the first 6 months of this year for receivables and potential forex loss. Let me hear your opinion about that. Do you think 1.5 million given the circumstances is too conservative, or is it an adequate provision, or it's insufficient if you think that more provisions should be made, specifically given the circumstance, given the current geopolitical and economic situation, especially in CS countries in Ukraine? Please take your time to vote. I'll give you a few seconds on that, and then we'll proceed. And I'm sorry, since I missed a couple of polling questions, I think we should quite instantly proceed to the next polling question when this one is closed. Yeah, and the next polling question, I'm sorry, I'm getting slightly behind the schedule with this one. I was referring earlier that we are planning a Baltic Nordic roadshow later next month, would you be interested? Of course, if you are really interested, and we will, as I said, we will try to arrange the meeting with you if possible. But if you are in Baltic Nordic region, would you be interested to schedule a meeting? please indicate yes or no, or also please indicate if you're not from Baltics or Nordics, so your country, your city is not covered by the proposed roadshow. Please take time to vote, and in the meantime, we will then, of course, proceed further with what's happening recently with our chain of pharmacies. And later on, we'll have a last polling question, which is quite directly related to the focus topic of this webinar. So yeah, I hope you've taken your time to vote, and now we can proceed further with the presentation. Now, yeah, what happened with the development? How did the pharmacies develop? In a few short words. Ever since we acquired pharmacy chain, again, those of you who follow us may have noticed that our Latvian sales grew substantially. So, in the fact that today Latvia's share in our total sales is 24%, bigger than ever, and Russia's share is diluted to 31%, is pretty much due to the fact that we are running chain of pharmacies, which not only adds our pharmacy sales to us, but also allows us to have a financially viable wholesaling function. Last month, according to Softden data, Latvia's apteekas had 5% of Latvian pharmaceutical market, so they have 5% share. Also, according to Softden, the market share of Latvia's apteekas continues growing. Year-on-year growth of Latvian pharma retail market has been 10.8%, while Latvia's apteekas grew by 12.4%. As you'll see later, most of that growth comes from acquisitions, not from organic growth, but still our market share is increasing. Now, this is where the pharmacies are located now. You see, out of 60 pharmacies, 26 are located in Riga. The next biggest Latvian city is the city of Daugavpils, and that's the next biggest city for Latvia's apteekas as well. We have 5 pharmacies there. We have 3 pharmacies in Jūrmala, 2 pharmacies in our hometown of Olaine, and 2 pharmacies in northwest town of Talsi. All the other small dots here, we only have 1 pharmacy, but we are glad to be represented in reasonably important Latvian towns like Jelgava and Valmiera and Ādaži and Pļaviņas as well. So yeah, we are increasing our presence. You see, here you can see the trend, how pharmacies are located. This is for logistics purposes as well. You see, this is like most of pharmacies are located in the neighborhoods of Riga. But then you also see the northwest direction. You see western direction. Then you see the eastern direction. You see the big base here in Daugavpils, and you see the northeast direction here. So the location of pharmacies is not coincidence. They are acquired or established, making the logistics routes more efficient. So if you look, never seen. I mean, Latvia's apteekas normally are incorporated in the consolidated balance sheets that we publish, but they've never really had an opportunity to see some sort of balance sheet of their own. So here it is. It's only here for last 3 quarters. The reason being that since during the acquisition we were acquiring really several companies, we needed to undergo the process of merger via reorganizing them into one company. Therefore, the financial figures of many different companies we had before would not really be comparable. So therefore, they are, since most of the reorganization was finalized late last year, now you can see pretty much consistent figures. And you see not any major changes, major fluctuations in balance sheet. You see the companies performing with increasing retained earnings, except for, as you see, June 30th of this year. since at that time dividends of 300,000 were proposed and paid to the owner, in this case to Olainfarm. So the company is up and running and profitable and making dividends, now paying dividends. And this is how P&L is looking either by quarters or at the end of a period. So looking for last year, full year, they made profits of more than 14, almost 15 million euros, of a net profit of slightly above 400,000. And you know, this year, in 6 months, they are already almost at 300,000 euros. Obviously, will surpass the profit levels of last year, especially as we'll see later in the presentation. The better in terms of seasonality, the better months are still coming. So how they have been performing? So there are 3 indicators I've selected here. These are average number of pharmacies in the given year, see average sales per pharmacy, and average gross markup. Now, as you know, as I told, we've been trying to increase quite rapidly the number of pharmacies when we started to invest in this business, and quite quickly we grew to almost 50 pharmacies. We have now slowed down, as you see. Excuse me. And since we've reached the sort of critical mass to justify our own wholesaling operations, pricing of medicines is strictly regulated here. Therefore, the indicator of gross markup is important. So prices of medicines is fixed. So there's not much you can influence in terms of markup there, but you can influence the overall markup by changing your product mix in your sales. So medicines are regulated, but food supplements, medical devices, cosmetics, things like that, that you can freely sell in pharmacies, that are normally being sold in pharmacies. Pricing is not being regulated, so it's always challenging to increase the share of non-regulated products versus regulated products, because that leads to also increased profitabilities. However, normally there is a dilemma between having a pharmacy in a clinic where you have probably more patients coming in, more clients coming in, but the vast majority of them would, of course, acquire prescription products or even compensation products, which have even smaller margin. But then again, versus the other alternative, which would normally be the shopping centers, you'll probably certainly pay higher rent there, but you'll have people coming in and buying things that prices are not regulated, like cosmetics, like food supplements and other things. So that's the management challenge, if you like, for the managers of pharmacy chain to boost the overall markup. So like I said, you do that by trying to adjust the sales mix. Average sales of pharmacy, you see it's, as we increase the number, it has been going steadily down from 26,000 euros per month to 23.7 thousand euros per month, and has returned now to a little higher levels this year. And again, in this year, better months are still to come. So I think we've managed to turn the trend around a little. However, you saw back in the map of where our pharmacies are located, many of them are in rural areas, and of course, depopulation of rural areas is also, of course, influencing the average sales per pharmacy. So this is a seasonality factor. And you can quite clearly see here seasonality. Every single year you have month of January, March, and October being absolutely the best ones. And then you have months of May through August every year being the poorest ones. So we still have a good September, November, and even December being a nice month. So we still have a few good months in this year to go. So I believe that sales per pharmacy per month might keep improving in 2015. And you also see the difference between the worst month of the year and the best month of the year could be as high as 40%. Now, last, could I ask you to put the last polling question? Since I've given you some overview of how our pharmacy business is doing, let me ask you if you think that, with all things considered, diversity of markets, bigger sales, smaller margins, but still bigger profits overall, and all other things that you already know about our pharmacy operations. What do you think? Has it been good? It's been almost 4 years since we operated this business, and we may ask you for first conclusions. So what do you think? Has this been a good investment? Should we continue it? It was good, but we should stick to it as it is, or it was not a good investment and we should look for an opportunity to divest from pharmaceutical business. Please take your time to vote. The other big factor behind the sales per pharmacy, the other big factor that defines the success or not success of a given pharmacy was the markup level that on average you get on the products you sell there. And here I have a slide of that. It initially looks slightly messy, as you see, but this chart now represents the markup in a given month from 2012 through 2015. Well, what this tells me that we've certainly learned a good lesson comparing to 2012, and our markup is 2 to 3, even in some months even 3 percentage points above what we used to have when we just got involved in this business in 2012. There is no really clear seasonality here. Well, you could see that generally in summer month the markup tends to be somewhat smaller, and generally the year starts with markup levels bigger than it ended previously, and then throughout the year generally they have a trend of declining. Yeah, the overall, but in general this might as well be some sort of coincidence, and maybe not that hugely experienced in retail yet, but at least you, I think, can draw some conclusions. And I think the very last chart I have for this webinar is this one. It doesn't really have a huge importance as far as information is concerned, but that might be interesting to compare this pie chart to our product pie chart. Now, this product pie chart represents split of Olainfarm product sales in Latvijas Apteeka. You can see how different or undifferent it is from our overall split. And this is data for 7 months. You see that some of the leaders are the same. You see, well, Management is not a leader, but he's one of the biggest ones, and so is Nulf and Furmag and Forsol, and Adaptol is also around here, and Fenkral. What hit my eye was that others are tremendously big. It's about almost 1/3 are not in one of any of our big products. So the diversity, the decentralization is bigger, and also we have a much bigger influence of so-called typical classical, say, unbranded generics. You see omeprazole being second best seller. You'll see the Citramon, which is pretty much an old Soviet pain-killing generic, is being number 5. You would see yogurt, which is one of the probiotics, also having a reasonably big share in our sales by our pharmacies. And generally, in sales in Latvia's Apteeka, our share is much bigger than our sales in Latvian pharmaceutical retail market overall. In Latvian pharmaceutical retail, we are talking about market share fluctuating between 1% and 2%. Then in Latvia's Apteekas, of course, our market share sometimes reaches 4% or even bigger share. So that was the short overview of how we are doing in our marketing pharmaceutical retail business. Again, for those of you who have questions even after the webinar, these are the contacts that and you can always reach me. And also use them in case you think you want to see Olainfarm people in our roadshow in Baltics and Nordics. So that's it from me for the official part, and I think it's time for a Q&A session. Lasma?
Salvi, thank you for the presentation. Yes, now I will proceed with the questions in the order they were received. But before, I would like to remind you that you can still send in your questions in the section on the right side of your screen. So I will proceed with the first question that was received during the webinar. According to the report, 460,000 euros from the profits of this year's second quarter were used for provisions for CIS receivables. What are the reasons for provisions? Is it related to the devaluation of Belarus ruble? Salvi?
Yeah, no, thank you. It's not related to the devaluation of Belarus ruble, because Belarus market is pretty much driven and controlled by state-owned wholesalers. And unless government fails, these wholesalers do not fail. It's basically related mostly to Russian partners. As you see, we had reasonably big difficulty with one of them late last year, for which we provided slightly more than €1 million in the last quarter of last year. Overall payment from Russia is now taking a bit longer, so we took a conservative approach, and we don't really have any clear signals of any other wholesaler being close to bankruptcy or failing or whatever, but really just an overall provision for situations we see it is a bit more unstable than it normally used to be 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. Lasma?
Thank you, Salvi. The next question. In report, it is mentioned that more attention is being paid to possible acquisitions of a company whose sales markets or products are significantly different from those of Olainfarm. Does Olainfarm think about acquisition of a company from other area than manufacturing of finished drug forms and chemical pharmaceutical products and pharmacy business? Is Olainfarm thinking about acquisition in other markets than Latvia? Salvi?
Yes, thank you. Let's say there are different alternatives that we are looking at. There's again nothing that I could really disclose yet, but what we are looking at, in all cases, it is in one way or another related to pharmaceutical business or medical business or things like that. So we're not going to catering or air traffic or something like this. Yeah, we are staying with pharmaceuticals. Have several ideas, both in Latvia or abroad. They're all related to pharmaceutical or medical production. Yes, as soon as there are things that I could report, of course, I'll report them first thing for everyone. But we're staying with pharmaceuticals, if that was the salt of the question. Lasma?
So yes, there was this second question about acquisition of other markets than Latvia.
Yeah, of course. When we're looking for targets, we are of course one of the things we look at is that this targets opens us not only sales they have, but helps us entering other markets as well. Yeah, we would of course when selecting the target, we of course would prefer some company that adds more markets. So the answer is yes. Lasma?
Thank you, Sally. The next question. Can you specify first half year 2015 figures for other operating income and other operating expense?
Well, other operating expense, other operating income, I don't think there's any major deviation from our regular results, except that it might be slightly higher. It might deviate depending on whether or not we have received some co-funding. from let's say EU co-funding of our project. But as far as other operating expense is concerned, that's where we place the provisions. So that has to be boosted by an extra 1.5 million in Q2 alone. Lasma?
Salvi, thank you. At this moment, we have not received any more questions, so maybe we could wait for a couple of moments. Maybe somebody is typing in. I remind you that you can still type in your questions on the question box on the right side of your screen. If not, as Salvis mentioned, you have option to contact Salvis directly for any other questions after the webinar that you may have.
Yep, exactly, and I would really highly appreciate your response for the Brochure. We still have pretty much many slots available, yeah, if you're really interested in meeting, then the sooner you reply, the bigger our chance that we will fit you in the schedule somehow. Now I see the question.
Yes, Salvi, there's a question indeed. Kazakhstan devaluated its currency in the end of August. Does that somehow affect Olainfarm?
It certainly does. It certainly does. I've said a couple of times before, but those of you who haven't been joining all the webinars, the sort of good, well, not the good, but anyway, tradition for the CIS foreign markets is that, you know, in these countries you have devaluations from time to time. So if there is a devaluation of local currency, and the importer, once the product is imported, has to then trade that product in local currency. And whatever is on stock at the time of devaluation, of course, the importer has a forex loss on it. So the tradition is, the unwritten law, if you like, is that whoever importer has a loss from importing products made by a foreign producer, then this foreign producer would split the forex loss that has occurred from the products of that particular producer. So if in August there was a devaluation in Kazakhstan, that means that the wholesalers, the Kazakh wholesalers that had our product in their stock at the time of devaluation, will, of course, turn to us and say, oh, listen, guys, on your products, we lost 20,000 or 10,000 or 15,000 or whatever amount of euros. Would you mind compensating 50% of that? And sort of the unwritten market law is that we normally do that. So we will certainly, therefore, have some write-offs of our Kazakh receivables in one way or another. But this is again one of the reasons we have made provisions for. Although in Kazakhstani case, I don't expect these volumes to be of any major significance. You see Kazakhstan making up in Q2 about 2% of our sales. So even if all the sales were in the stock at the time of devaluation, even in that case, which of course is very, very unlikely, but even in that case, our losses out of that would be really limited to a few tens of thousands only. Lasma?
Salvi, thank you. We have one more question. While it cannot be disclosed anything specific about possible acquisitions, does it mean that there are currently negotiations with possible targets?
Yes, it does. That's exactly what it means. We are talking to several targets. We are in different stages of a process, and before we have agreed on anything more specific, more concrete, of course I cannot. There's not much I can tell you about any greater detail. Lasma?
Thank you, Salvi. All questions are answered, and sorry, there is one more question. Does Olainfarm consider about share buyback programs to add value for shareholders, or management thinks that the share price is too high for that?
No, the management does not think the share price is too high for that. Management thinks that, and that's pretty much confirmed by
all the analysts that are writing coverage on us that Olainfarm is still undervalued. Why we are reluctant to do a buyback program is that one of the key reasons for big investors' reluctance to take any serious position in Olainfarm. So one of the key reasons for that is limited free float. And one thing that we might do if we come up with a share buyback is we would reduce the free float even further, thus reducing liquidity even further, thus reducing our attractiveness for bigger institutional investors even further. And it might not be something that shareholders would like, because further reduced liquidity will, of course, eventually hit the share price as well. So this has been discussed, but this has been opposed by absolutely all management members, and this has been opposed by all the bigger investors that personally have been speaking to. Lasma?
Salvi, thank you. So I can see there are no questions. All questions are answered by now. As Salvis mentioned before, if you have any questions, you are free to contact Salvis after the webinar. I remind you that recorded presentation will be available in the Nasdaq Baltic YouTube channel webinar playlist and the investors portal naudaslietas.lv. Salvi, thank you for the presentation and for answers given. Participants, thank you for joining.
Thanks for joining, and see you in about 3 months.